I had been Lucian's secret lover for 3 years. On the day he got engaged, he publicly responded to his relationship with me, "I won't like Brooke, never will. I just regard her as my sister." Later, someone took pictures of me praying for blessings in the temple, kowtowing step by step. I smiled calmly and said, "I'm just praying for the afterlife of an old acquaintance. It has nothing to do with Lucian." However, that young master of the Vivian family went crazy. The usually calm and self-possessed him actually stopped a cruise ship publicly and was looking for someone like a madman. The young master of the Vivian family suddenly got engaged. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, he chose the day of his engagement to be on the same day as my last new music release conference before I retired from the entertainment circle. The TV in the lounge was on, and it happened to be broadcasting the live broadcast of Lucian's engagement ceremony. In the square TV screen, Lucian was wearing a suit, holding a goblet with his well-defined hands, and his figure was tall and slender. In my memory, these hands always liked to stroke gently behind my ears. Even last night was the same. Then, he took the cigarette I was smoking with his thumb and index finger and put it into his own mouth. The smoke he exhaled was dispersed by the evening wind. Lucian said in a hoarse voice, "Brooke, don't think about running away. You can only stay by my side in this lifetime." However, at this moment, Lucian was standing with his fiancée. The girl had a bright smile and affectionately held his other arm with a huge diamond ring on her middle finger. The engagement ceremony between the only son of the Vivian family group and the eldest princess of the Minglan group naturally attracted much attention. Not only many powerful and wealthy people in Haicheng came, but also many reporters were invited to the scene. The staff carried cameras and pointed the lenses at Lucian and his fiancée, Stella. The two of them were a perfect match. Even the usually sharp-tongued entertainment reporters kept praising them as a match made in heaven. Suddenly, a reporter inexplicably asked a question that had nothing to do with the engagement ceremony. "There's a very hot revelation on the internet recently. I don't know if Lucian has seen it or not." That incident caused a big stir. For a whole week, the names of Lucian and I were both on the hot search list and stayed there for a long time. So much so that everyone thought that the engagement between the Vivian family and the Minglan group would definitely be cancelled. After all, some of the words in those revelations on the internet were really unbearable. However, unexpectedly, they chose to publicly announce their engagement ahead of schedule at this time. For a while, the live broadcast screen was filled with the sound of shutters clicking. The reporter who asked the question added, "It's about the revelations between you and the pianist Brooke. Did you really have that kind of relationship before? And why did you break up? Was it because of money?" After saying that, she held the microphone in front of Lucian. I was suddenly very curious about how Lucian would explain our complicated relationship to the world. So I turned up the volume of the TV. But all that came through the microphone was Lucian's silence and his fiancée Stella's words, "Lucian, what are you in a daze for?" Lucian seemed to have just come to his senses. He raised his eyes and looked at someone over the camera. A few seconds later, he bent slightly and leaned forward to respond in front of the microphone. "There are too many boring people in this circle, so they make up those false revelations. Regarding Brooke and me, I don't like her and will never like her." Under his pair of sword-like eyebrows, Lucian's eyes looked straight at the camera, "because she and I are like brother and sister. It's not the kind of relationship as said on the internet, and we will never have any other relationship." He clenched Stella's hand, turned his head to look at her, showing deep affection in the camera. "It's a pity that Banksy couldn't be here today to witness our engagement." As soon as he finished speaking, the camera shooting Lucian suddenly lost focus and then quickly focused on his collar, clearly photographing the brooch. The brooch in the shape of the Banksy flower was a gift given to me by Lucian on my birthday one year, and then on a certain night later, I threw it into the moat. But now, the brooch was intact and pinned on his chest, against the all-black high-end suit. This touch of white was particularly conspicuous. "But I believe that Banksy will surely bless us." Lucian's voice was originally cold and clear, and when he spoke again, it was inexplicably a bit hoarse. "After all, we are brother and sister. but no one knew. Just last night, when he was drunk, he also whispered in my ear with this voice, "Brooke, why don't you elope with me?" At that time, some memories covered with blood emerged in front of my eyes. I smiled and raised my hand to touch his earlobe that was reddened by the atmosphere. "Lucian, don't you think that I'm really just a little white rabbit that can be slaughtered at will by my enemies?" During the break of the press conference, I was standing in the backstage touching up my makeup. Assistant Shawan looked down at the manuscript in her hand and confirmed the final process of this press conference with me. "Brooke, the next step is the question and answer session with reporters. I heard that the boss invited the most sharp-tongued reporter in the circle this time to create some heat. The questions might be..." Shawan paused. When she looked at me, there was hesitation on her face. "The questions might be very tricky. You should be careful." I nodded to let her rest assured. I don't know which gossipmonger it was who chose to release those materials at this time. Shawan muttered softly while standing aside. 3 days ago, someone anonymously posted a post on a social networking site. The title directly mentioned the names of Lucian and me. True story. The pianist Brooke was Lucian's secret lover for 3 years. I have an acquaintance in Brooke's studio, and she said that Brooke just hooked up with Lucian, the big shot. There are so many people who play the piano well. Why is it that only she can become famous and even be a tutor in a talent show? She exchanged her beauty for resources. Those who understand, understand. In just a few hours, that post had received over 10,000 likes. The hashtags about me on Weibo also changed from hashtag Brooke Young Pianist hashtag to hashtag Brooke Kept Woman hashtag Brooke Lover hashtag. Finally, what made this gossip top the hot search list was several secretly taken photos. In a room of a hotel under the Vivian family group, Lucian and I were standing by the window together. 3 buttons on his shirt were unbuttoned, and I was wearing a red off-the-shoulder dress, with my arm close to his. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival night at that time. Fireworks rose from the ground and exploded in the thick night. I said softly, "Your mother is in the next room, Lucian. Do you dare to kiss me?" Hearing this, Lucian turned his head to look at me, then, he raised his hand to support the back of my head and put his other arm around my waist. At the moment when the gorgeous fireworks lit up the night sky, Lucian lowered his head and kissed the corner of my lips very gently. Immediately after that, his lips moved up along my side face and finally stopped by my ear. "Brooke." He called my name, and there was a smile in his low voice. "The paparazzo you found seems not very professional." Just as Shawan had expected, the questions from that sharp-tongued reporter were indeed very tricky. She picked up the microphone and introduced herself first. "I'm Quinn, a reporter from the Nanbay News Network." The prearranged question script was clenched in her hand. She looked down at it and then put the question script back on the table again. "I think everyone present knows that Miss Sue has been in the center of public opinion recently. I heard that there is a self-composed piece among the piano pieces you released this time, and that piece is also named Nyen. Then, Miss Sue, did you write this piece to commemorate someone?" When looking at me, the reporter named Quinn had a sly look in her eyes. Shawan, who was always outspoken, said, "This question wasn't in the manuscript we agreed on in advance." I was sitting in the middle of the stage, and all the spotlights in the hall were focused on me, stretching my figure very long. Under the aftereffect of that lover scandal, at this moment, both the reporters and the audience were waiting for my answer. "Yes." My voice rang out through the microphone in the not-so-big studio hall. "This piece was indeed written by me to commemorate someone, but..." Under the stage, discussions and the sound of shutters clicking arose one after another. No one wanted to miss the first-hand gossip. I licked the corner of my lips and spoke again. "However, he has passed away. He once said that his greatest wish in this lifetime was to be able to listen to me play the piano in such an occasion. I believe that at this moment, he might have already heard it in heaven." Immediately, Quinn raised the microphone and asked again in a sharp tone, "There are many rumors about you and the young master of the Vivian family group on the internet recently. Some people say that you are his kept lover, and some people say that you are the third party between him and the eldest daughter of the Minglan group. Do you have anything to say about this? Yes. I answered without hesitation. Just as Lucian said, he and I are indeed just brother and sister. After a pause, I raised my head and looked at the camera that was pointing at me under the stage. There was a red light flashing beside the machine, proving that this press conference was being broadcast live. Today is the day of Lucian's engagement. Then I'll wish him. I'll wish my brother a happy marriage and a long and lasting relationship. As soon as the press conference ended, the video clip of Quinn interviewing me was forwarded by many people. Well deserved to be the #1 sharp-tongued person in the entertainment circle. Facing someone as shameless as Brooke, she should really give a hard rebuttal. Lovers finally become siblings. What brother and sister? It's so disgusting. I'm laughing so hard. Did anyone see Brooke's awkward expression? I'm going to screenshot it and use it as an emoji. However, they wouldn't know. In the empty corridor, Quinn quickly pulled me and stuffed a USB flash drive into my hand. What you want is still short of a part, and then it will be all complete. Did you watch that live stream? Rich people really know how to have fun. They even had to do a live stream for their engagement. Just as I walked into the parking lot, I heard a male voice with an echo. Another familiar male voice said, I've heard that originally, the Minglan group didn't agree to get engaged to the Lucian family. After all, that scandal between the young master of the Lucian family and our pianist had been on the hot search for such a long time. Then why did Minglan finally agree to get engaged to the Vivian family? It's all because the eldest daughter of Minglan liked him. I heard that as soon as she saw those scandals online, she cried and insisted on getting engaged to the Lucian family. She seems to be adopted by the chairman and his wife of Minglan Group, and they dote on her very much. So they had no choice but to agree to the engagement. By the way, Brother Zhang, I've always been curious. What's the relationship between Brooke and the Lucian family? They don't even have the same surname. How can she be the sister of that young master? I lifted my feet and walked around the corner, then stopped beside the nanny van. The two staff members who were chatting animatedly immediately shut their mouths when they saw me, and the gossip they were about to say turned into flattery. Brooke, are you tired? Shall I buy you a cup of coffee or milk tea? I smiled and opened the car door. It's okay. You can go back to the studio and get busy. When the car was driving out of the parking lot, my assistant Xiaowen handed me a makeup remover wipe. Through the makeup mirror, I saw that Xiaowen in the back seat was staring at me blankly. I jokingly asked, Am I that ugly? No. Xiaowen quickly shook her head. She scratched the tip of her nose. Brooke, when I just looked at you, I suddenly felt that you look like someone. After saying that, Xiaowen had a thoughtful expression on her face. Suddenly, she slapped her thigh. It's the fiancé who just got engaged to the young master of the Lucian family on TV, Stella. Don't mention it. Not only the lips, but also the eyes and nose look quite similar to hers. I didn't answer. I just raised my hand and turned off the light. The carriage instantly fell into darkness, leaving only the light of the evening. Xiaowen couldn't see the corners of my mouth drooping. When the nanny van was about to enter the community, I called out to the driver, I have a headache. I want to walk around and get some fresh air. Just park the car here. After I got out of the car, Xiaowen stuck her head out of the window. Sister, is your old headache problem acting up again? It's been so many years. You should go to the hospital to have a look. It's not a good idea to just endure it all the time. It's a problem in my heart. Doctors can't do anything about it. Okay, go back quickly. I said. Perhaps because it was already autumn and this was a coastal city, it had started to get a bit chilly at night. I hugged a stack of paper music scores tightly in my arms and walked with my head down through the last corner in front of the apartment building. My mobile phone vibrated. I took it out and saw that it was a text message from a number that I hadn't saved. He might come to find you. I put away my phone and walked a few more steps forward. I sniffed and suddenly smelled the faint fragrance of laurel in the air. I subconsciously looked up. In my sight, under a street lamp a few steps away from me, countless flying insects were flying around the light tirelessly. Besides that, there was Lucian. His stance was a bit lazy. At this time, he was only wearing a striped shirt, and the suit with the Banksy flower brooch pinned on it was held in his hand, fluttering with his smoking movements. The evening breeze blew, and the little flames on his fingertips flickered on and off. I just took one look and then withdrew my gaze, walking towards the apartment building where I lived. However, in the next second, Lucian's cold voice came from behind me, "Brooke. Stop." I turned around in response. Under the dim yellow light, Lucian looked at me indifferently for a few seconds. Then, he turned his head to take the last puff of his cigarette, and immediately there was a faint wisp of smoke lingering around his nose. Lucian threw the extinguished cigarette into the trash can, took long strides, and walked slowly towards me. "Aren't you going to invite me up for a sit-down?" he asked. I looked up and met his gaze. "It's not convenient." Hearing that, Lucian raised his eyebrows. "What? After I moved out, have you learned to hide someone at home?" He stopped at a position very close to me. Only then did I see the bluish-purple mark on his forehead and the scar at the corner of his eye that still had bloodshot in it. While I was lost in thought, Lucian spoke again. His tone didn't seem to have changed much, but it seemed a bit colder. "Is it the one for whom you wrote the music?" "Yes." I took a step back to widen the distance between us again. "So can you leave now, Lucian?" Lucian seemed to be stung by a certain word I said, and his brows furrowed tightly. In the next second, he quickly raised his hand and tightly grasped my wrist, but the moment his skin touched mine, he let go of his hand. In a panic, the music scores scattered all over the ground. Since it had rained last night, there was still some water on the ground. The brand new scores fell into it, and the originally clearly printed musical notes gradually became blurred. "Brooke, is this all you want?" I squatted down halfway, picked up the music scores soaked in the water, and crumpled them into a ball. "No." I looked up at Lucian's facial features bathed in the warm light, and the hand hidden in my pocket tightly held the cold USB flash drive. "What I want is far more than this." After returning home, I closed the door and walked into the living room. I stopped in front of the white wall that reflected the faint moonlight. There was only one photo frame hanging on the clean white wall. In the photo, the smiles of the two people were frozen by the camera at the happiest moment. I seemed to be able to hear them saying, "Brooke, remember to be as happy as today every day in the future." Then, on that sunny day, they jumped from the abandoned tall building. In just a few seconds, blood splattered everywhere. I quickly closed my eyes, not daring to look at their faces in the photo anymore, and just whispered, "I'm back." "Did you have a good day today?" At night, it suddenly started to drizzle in Haicheng. The bedroom window was half open, and the pattering rain reached my ears. Gradually, I fell asleep. In recent years, I had nightmares almost every night. After waking up from the nightmares, I would sit on the bed until dawn, day after day. However, on this night when I saw Lucian, finally, my dream was no longer about the blood splashing on my shoes or the smoke curling up in the morning hall, but only about Lucian. When I was 22 years old, Lucian took me to Finland for a graduation trip. He stood beside me, looking up at the aurora. I turned my head to look at him. His eyelashes were very long, which often reminded me of the wings of a butterfly. I asked, "Lucian, do you like me?" In my sight, his eyelashes covered with ice crystals and the wind and snow trembled. After a few minutes of silence, he replied softly, "You're overthinking it." When I was 23 years old, Lucian went on a business trip to the other side of the world for half a year for starting his business and couldn't even come back for the new year. According to his assistant, he was often so busy that he would forget to eat for several days. After getting up, I saw the WeChat message sent by Lucian, "I won't be back on your birthday." I opened the world clock and found the city where Lucian was. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. "Okay," I replied. However, at 2400 hours when my birthday was about to arrive, he traveled tens of thousands of kilometers and came to the downstairs of the apartment I rented and set off exclusive fireworks for me in front of me. "Happy birthday, Brooke," Lucian said. He took out a beautifully packaged box, opened it, and revealed a necklace with a pendant in the shape of a Banksy flower. I was a bit stunned. Although the Banksy flower has bright colors, it grows in the deep mountains. Even during its flowering period, it's difficult for it to bloom, so few people like it, and no brand would use its elements in jewelry design. I could guess that Lucian must have had it specially made. In the night, his slender fingers picked up the necklace. Let me put it on for you. As his words fell, he held the necklace with both hands and brought it to my ear. I lowered my eyes and gathered my loose hair to the front of the other shoulder. Lucian, will you like me? I asked. No. He answered firmly and without hesitation, but at that moment, I felt the tremble of his hand when it slid across my cheek as it fell. In the next second, I stood on tiptoe, leaned close to Lucian, and gently kissed the corner of his mouth. But I like you, Lucian, I said. Since childhood, all the people around who knew about our relationship said that Lucian was very kind to me, his sister without blood ties. But no one knew that actually, when we first met, he hated me very much, nor would anyone know that in the past 10 years, I had confessed my love to Lucian countless times. Every time, his answer was the same sentence, I don't like you. This time was no exception. Lucian withdrew his hands, his fingertips trembling slightly. Brooke, I will never like you. I chuckled softly and said in my heart, fortunately. Fortunately, you don't like me. In this way, when the game comes to an end, I won't be soft-hearted because of you. I was woken up by Siowen's phone call. She sounded anxious. Sister, look at your phone quickly. You're on the hot search again. Opening Weibo, I saw my name at a glance, and the following trending topic was Haicheng Welfare Institute. In just a few minutes, there were already thousands of comments under the post that dug into my life story. Was Brooke an orphan before? No wonder she likes to be the lover of a big shot so much. It must be because she has no parents and no one taught her how to behave. No. Did you read it carefully upstairs? Brooke and the one from the Lucian family are real siblings. She was adopted by his parents back then, the year I was sent to the welfare home in Haicheng. I was 12 years old. The man pushed me to the side of the welfare home director and said, "You'll live here from now on, okay?" Seeing that I was staring at him coldly, he thought for a moment and then his tone became gentle. Brooke, I'm just keeping those money, houses and cars for you. When you turn 18 and become an adult, I'll naturally return them to you. He seemed to be speaking from the bottom of his heart. If I hadn't heard him say on the phone, "Son, Dad has money now. I'll go buy you toys," maybe I would have believed him. My uncle drove our car farther and farther away. Instinctively, I wanted to chase after it, but I was suddenly pulled back by the director beside me. In a place where no one could see, his hand landed on my side waist. Then, he pinched it hard. With the heart-wrenching pain, I turned my head in shock to look at the director. I saw that his expression was as usual, and even there was a smile in his eyes. Little Brooke, don't be afraid. I and these teachers will take good care of you. From now on, this will be your home. I didn't know if this place would become my home. All I knew was that family members wouldn't touch my body with ill intentions like that. Nor would they grab my hair and throw me against the concrete wall of the basement just because I didn't obey. I lived in the seemingly warm welfare home from the spring when everything came back to life to the winter when it was covered with snow. After 245 days and nights, the turn of misfortune finally came along with the spring of the second year. One day after the beginning of spring, a Cayenne slowly drove into the welfare home amid the welcome of the director and teachers on both sides. When the car stopped, after the door opened, a woman poked her head out. As soon as her feet in high heels stepped on the ground, the director immediately held an umbrella over her head. On the other side, a man in a suit also got out of the car, and behind him was a boy who looked about my age. I stood by the window on the second floor, watching them walk into the door of the welfare home dormitory. A long time ago, the teacher had told us that a couple would come to the welfare home to adopt a child. They had only one son, so they especially wanted to adopt a girl. At that time, the teacher pointed out of the window and said, "See that? The biggest hotel in Haicheng belongs to their family." I looked in the direction the teacher pointed. In the distance, a tall building towered into the clouds in the newest business district of Haicheng. The extremely clean glass reflected the sunlight. After looking at it for a long time, my eyes felt a bit sore. When the other children were running around in a group, I lowered my head and wiped away my tears randomly. It turned out that it was such an easy thing for a building to go from being abandoned, becoming an unfinished building that others said owed the final payment, to being so clean and magnificent as it is today. All it took was to make two people disappear. Originally, the couple from the Vivian family didn't plan to adopt me. They had decided on a girl a long time ago. Her name was Stella. A few days ago was Stella's birthday, and the Lucian family sent a lot of gifts. At this time, Stella was showing off in front of the other children while wearing a pink dress that was one of the gifts. "You don't have such a beautiful dress." "Only I have it." "Envious? You just stay here and be orphans." "I'm going to be the little princess of the Vivian family group." My thoughts were pulled back. I stood at the door and heard the director's flattering voice. When Stella passed by me, I opened my mouth and stopped her. "Your dress is so ugly." She was holding a bottle of imported fruit juice sent by the Lucian family in her hand. Hearing my words, her hand that was unscrewing the cap paused. "What did you say?" Stella asked. When the intermittent footsteps were getting closer, I looked at Stella and repeated softly, "I said your dress is really ugly." "Brooke, I think you..." She unscrewed the cap, raised her head and took a sip of the fruit juice. "You're just jealous that I have a better life than you. We're all orphans. I can be adopted by rich people. What about you? You can only hide under the quilt and cry secretly while looking at that old photo in the middle of the night." Half a minute later, those footsteps sounded at the corner of the second-floor corridor. "I heard that your parents died a horrible death and didn't even leave a whole body." TSK, so pitiful," Stella said and held the fruit juice up to my head. "Since that's the case, you can drink this bottle of fruit juice." The next second, the orange liquid slid down my forehead, and the fragrance of citrus filled my nose. I suddenly remembered my 11th birthday. Mom had made a birthday cake early and put a piece of white chocolate on it, with the words written on it, "Little princess, be happy forever." After blowing out the candles, Mom said that Dad's project was coming to an end and he had a lot of things to do, but even so, Dad still rushed back, holding a box of my favorite imported fruit juice in his arms. He opened a bottle and handed it to me. "Little greedy cat, I knew you wanted to drink it." Outside of my memory, Stella was amused by my funny look and giggled. "How is it? Is it good?" Suddenly, the laughter stopped abruptly. Stella looked out of the door and muttered, "Aunt Fu." I turned my head and saw a woman in a cheongsam standing at the door, her lips tightly pursed and her face ashen. Behind her were several men and women. Some of them were holding microphones in their hands, and some were carrying video cameras. The lenses were aimed at the farce between Stella and me. A man wearing glasses asked cautiously, "President Vivian, should we still shoot?" Just when the staff were about to put away the equipment, the woman suddenly said loudly, "Shoot. I want the people in Haicheng to know that our Lucian family won't adopt such a child with bad morals." I recognized her. She was Vivian, the daughter of the current chairman of the Vivian family group. After coming to the welfare home, I had read an interview about her. She said that she was originally the least valued child in the family. She just had to marry a man of equal social status when she reached the right age to fulfill her last bit of value. However, no one expected that she had turned an abandoned piece of land into the most prosperous business district in Haicheng by herself. Some people laughed at her. "No matter how powerful you are, once you get married in the future, you'll be like water poured out." However, later, she married her bodyguard. The man married into the family and changed his surname to Fu. What happened today made Vivian very angry. She said coldly to the director, "I think we'd better forget about the adoption." The rain outside the window was getting heavier. I turned around and went downstairs, rushed into the rain and ran to Vivian. "Can you be my mom? The mom in my dream looks a lot like you." As soon as I finished speaking, a hand with distinct knuckles held up a bright yellow umbrella, revealing a face with a childish look. I still remember Lucian's expression at that time. It was disdainful or perhaps contemptuous. With a beep sound, the video camera was turned on. In just an instant, Vivian's expression changed, the emotion in her eyes changed from disgust to pity. She squatted down halfway, and her hand with red nail polish stroked my side face. When she spoke again, there was already a sobbing tone in her voice. "Husband, she's so pitiful. The more I look at her, the more I think she also looks like that old acquaintance. Let's adopt her." The next day, Vivian's kind act made the headlines of all the major news. The video of her crying emotionally in the welfare home got tens of thousands of likes. Vivian adopts an orphan, sheds tears on the spot, touching millions of people in Haicheng. I scrolled the mouse, and another piece of news appeared on the screen. The struggle for power in the Vivian family comes to an end. Affected by public opinion, Vivian will become the new group successor. On the third day after Lucian's engagement, I received a phone call from Vivian after a long time. Her tone was still indifferent. "Come over for dinner." After a pause, she added, "Your brother and sister-in-law will also come." 11. Suppressing the agitation in my heart, I stepped into the old house of the Lucian family. In the living room on the first floor, only the aunt was busy in the kitchen. "Has brother come yet?" I asked. Hearing the voice, the aunt turned her head while washing the vegetables, with a hesitant expression on her face. "Lucian he?" Suddenly, a shrill shout came from the second floor, interrupting the aunt's words. "Shut up! Lucian, you bastard!" I quietly walked up the stairs and stood still outside the study door. "Since you were a child, I've taught you not to tell anyone your true feelings and not to expose your real thoughts. Where did all that go? Now, you're even going to rebel against your mother for an outsider? Lucian, I shouldn't have tried so hard to give birth to you in the first place." Then, with a slap sound, Vivian slapped Lucian on the face. "I'm not rebelling against you." Lucian's voice faintly came through the wooden door. "You asked me to get engaged, and I did. You asked me to marry Stella, and I agreed. From childhood to adulthood, I've always followed your teachings and never exposed my truest feelings to anyone. But now, you ask me to give up Brooke, and I can't do it." "Can't do it?" Vivian sneered. "Could it be that you're going to help her with those things too? You're really my good son." Footsteps sounded in the study and then stopped in front of the door. "Since I was a child, you've always been busy," Lucian said in a deep voice, "busy with work, busy fighting with Uncle and the others, and also busy raising those gigolos outside. So you probably don't know that when I was 18, Brooke saved my life. If it weren't for her, I might have died long ago." The next second, the wooden door was opened and I looked up and met Lucian's eyes. With a click sound, when the door closed, I instinctively said, "Brother." Hearing this, Lucian's eyes with bloodshot in them became darker. "Don't call me that. I'm not your brother, never have been." Until he turned around and walked down the stairs and disappeared from my sight, the last sentence he said to Vivian was still lingering in my ears. "So, you're right. I'll help her get what she wants. No matter what the cost is." 12. At dinner, Vivian sat in the host's seat. Lucian and Stella were sitting side by side, facing me. The aunt put 4 steaks beside each person and said, "Madam, all the dishes are served. Stella, I heard from your mother that you like steak best. We specially prepared high-quality ones for you today. Have a taste." Stella nodded and said, "Thank you, Auntie. This steak must be delicious." As soon as she finished speaking, Vivian seemed to suddenly remember something. She looked at Stella and then at me and said, "Stella, do you still remember Banksy?" Hearing this, Stella raised her head, and her eyes with delicate makeup looked at me. "She seems a bit familiar." Suddenly, a look of surprise appeared on her face. "Is she the girl whose parents died and went to the welfare home with me at that time?" I smiled and said, "It's me. I'm the Brooke that you poured fruit juice on." Stella paused while cutting the steak, and her smile became a bit awkward. "I didn't expect that you've become a pianist. I often see your name on the hot search, and there are quite a lot of scandals." Lucian beside her suddenly threw his knife and fork onto the table. When they hit the plate, the noise startled everyone. "Miss Lee, I don't know if it's because you were also abandoned by your biological parents when you were young, adopted but not taught well, so you don't understand respect at all. But this isn't the Minglan group. Brooke is my sister. You're not qualified to talk to her like that. Lucian stood up and said, I don't have much of an appetite. I'll go back to the company first. After saying that, he walked straight towards the door. Vivian, who had always been extremely fond of her son, also quickly got up and chased after him. However, Stella just forked a piece of beef and put it into her mouth. After chewing, when she spoke again, her tone was completely different from the previous contemptuous one. I saw the photos taken by paparazzi. Are you still smoking? As she said this, the index finger of her other hand tapped on the table. Quit smoking as soon as possible. It's bad for your health. I nodded and said, okay. Smoking is bad for your health. The last person who said this to me was still Lucian. At that time, under Vivian's order, both Lucian and I could only apply for universities in Haicheng. He was 1 year older than me. When I went to register at the university, I learned that after he entered his sophomore year, he rented a house outside the school without telling his parents. Why don't you live in the dormitory? I sent him a WeChat message asking. A few hours later, Lucian finally replied, which was almost the same as what I expected, no reason. On the first night after moving into the dormitory, the girls' dormitory group was in an uproar. They said that there was an adult man peeping outside the window but they hadn't caught him yet. I took out my phone, calmly typed a line of words, and sent it to the chat box with Lucian, brother. There's a man peeping outside. I'm so scared. This time, Lucian replied instantly, take a taxi and come to me. Building 5, Xinyuan Community. Tell me when you get in the car. I'll wait for you at the entrance of the community. Brooke, don't run around. Wait for me to pick you up. I'll be there soon. Finally, he also sent 2 words, don't be afraid. The house rented by Lucian was not far from the school. Compared with the old house of the Lucian family, this house was very small, with only 1 bedroom and 1 living room. Walking into the living room, I looked around and said, it's quite clean here, and the decoration is also very warm. Well, the landlord originally planned to use it as a wedding room, Lucian said. There was a very small bookshelf beside the TV cabinet. I walked over and saw several unopened cookbooks. One of them was named 10 Dishes That Girls Love Most, and the cover was painted with boiled sliced pork and spicy sauce, which was my favorite dish. Not far away, Lucian took off his coat and only wore a loose sleeveless t-shirt. Learn these 10 dishes and win a girl's heart. I read out the slogan on the book with a smile, then turned to look at Lucian and said, what? Are you chasing someone recently? He didn't say anything and carried my suitcase into the living room. His well-defined muscles bulged with his movements. Brother, why don't you cook for me? I like you. As soon as I finished speaking, Lucian straightened up, put his hands into his trouser pockets, tilted his head slightly to look at me, and there seemed to be a glint in his eyes. So I said it again, I will like you. If I remember correctly, Brooke, this is the 97th time you've said you like me. Suddenly, the siren of an ambulance sounded outside the window. Lucian said, but I don't like you. He turned his head to look at my backpack on the sofa, revealing a corner of the cigarette box. Brooke, smoking is bad for your health. Live a little longer. At least, don't die before me. As early as the first day when I moved into the old house of the Lucian family, Lucian said that he didn't like me. At that time, several TV station staff put away their cameras. As soon as they left, Vivian took me from the bedroom like a little princess to the storage room on the 2nd floor. There was only a bed and a desk in there, and there wasn't even a wardrobe. I had to wipe the empty space by the window clean to put my few clothes. I didn't know when Lucian appeared at the door of the room. When I looked up, I saw him leaning against the door, looking at me coldly. I tried my best to force a smile and said, brother. Lucian sneered and said, I'm not your brother. Mom is mine alone. Don't dream that you can share their love for me. I don't like you. Don't call me that in the future. But the next day, when I saw him, I still sweetly called him a brother. Lucian, who was having breakfast, frowned and said, "Don't you understand what I said? Vivian didn't allow me to have dinner at the table with them." Before they came downstairs, I walked to the dining table and said softly to Lucian, "I understand. But I want to call you brother because I like you." After that, I still called him brother on my OWN.AS. Time passed. Although Lucian didn't say anything more, he didn't pay attention to me either. No one at school knew about our relationship because Vivian never allowed Lucian and me to appear outside at the same time. Others only knew that the Lucian family had adopted a girl from the welfare home, but they didn't know it was me. On the first day of school, I was blocked at the entrance of the school supermarket. "Do you have any money?" the school bully asked. I shook my head, and the hand hidden behind my back tightly held my wallet. "Bring it here. I'm telling you to bring your wallet here." The school bully walked towards me, grabbed my collar with one hand, and snatched my wallet with the other hand. "TSK, so poor. Why are you still coming to school here?" He looked at the few banknotes in the wallet and then stuffed the wallet into his own pocket. "Having something is better than nothing. Get lost." When tears uncontrollably flowed out of the corners of my eyes, suddenly I heard someone calling my name. "Brooke." I looked up. Not far away, Lucian was holding a basketball, walked through the onlooking classmates, and came in front of me. He looked coldly at the school bully and said, "Give it back to her." "Oh, isn't this the eldest young master of the Lucian family?" The school bully confronted Lucian. "I advise you to mind your own business. Otherwise, even if your surname is Fu, I'll still beat you up." Seeing that the atmosphere was getting more and more tense, and thinking that the school teachers would come to patrol here soon, I quickly grabbed the corner of Lucian's clothes. "Brother?" He turned his head to look at me, and I suddenly came to my senses and let go of my hand. "Lucian, forget it. It's just a wallet. I don't want it anymore." The school bully laughed a few times. "Did you hear that? She said she doesn't want it anymore. Why are you still bothering? Or is there something abnormal between you two?" Before the school bully could finish his words, he was interrupted by Lucian's fist. The two of them got into a fight and couldn't be stopped no matter what. I don't know who ran to the office to find the dean. Without asking the reason, the dean called both Lucian and the school bully to the office. I originally wanted to follow them. Lucian stopped, turned around to look at me and said, "If you feel sorry for me, go and pick up my basketball. I'll come to you to get it when I go home tonight." Seeing that I didn't answer, he added another sentence. "Don't think too much. Even if it wasn't you today but any other girl, I would still help. Don't think that just because I helped you means I've accepted you." However, Lucian didn't come back until very late. I was holding the basketball and was about to fall asleep when there was a sudden gentle knocking sound on the window. "Brooke, it's me." I quickly opened the window. Lucian put his hands on the windowsill and quickly climbed in. He threw his school uniform coat aside. Only then did I see that the school uniform, which had been carefully taken care of by the aunt, was now full of stains. "Damn it. That Chenwen deliberately threw your wallet into the garbage truck just to make things difficult for me. If I hadn't run fast, your wallet would have been disposed of with the garbage." He didn't care about his image at all and sat down on the ground with a plop, then threw his school bag to me. "Your wallet is in it. Take it yourself." However, it's the first time in my life that I've been to a garbage dump. There was so much garbage. I searched for a long time. "Hey, Brooke, don't cry," Lucian said as he stretched out his hand to me but stopped in front of me. "My hands are dirty. I won't wipe your tears. Don't cry." He scratched the top of his head and said, "It's the first time I've seen a girl cry." I found the wallet from his school bag. As soon as I opened it, I saw several banknotes inside. I counted them. There were a total of 200 yuan. But I clearly remembered that there were only 55 yuan in the wallet before it was snatched by the school bully. Later, I thought that the relationship between Lucian and me probably started to change from that night. And the punch that Lucian threw to help me also sowed the seeds of trouble 3 years later. The truth will come out sooner or later. The matter of Lucian fighting with others somehow reached Vivian's ears. Vivian took a wooden stick and hit Lucian hard on the back. She was angry not because of Lucian's injuries but because other people in the Lucian family knew about his fight. Vivian felt that she had lost face. I'm asking you why you fought. The wooden stick hit Lucian again and he groaned. I quickly walked to Lucian's side and said, "It's because of me." Vivian was about to get angry with me when Lucian raised his hand, grabbed my sleeve, and pulled me behind him. Because of you? Don't flatter yourself. Do you want to get closer to me as a sister? There's no need to do this, right? I fought because that guy fouled in the basketball game. What does it have to do with you? That night I sat by the wall in the storage room and heard Vivian educating Lucian through the crack of the door. Son, a beating is a sign of affection, do you understand? Mom just said that not loving you actually means loving you, and saying that she hates you actually means that she likes you. Mom does all these things for your own good. Only when you listen to Mom will she be happy. I smiled silently, laughing at how a murderer would educate her own child in this way. Half an hour later, there were footsteps in the corridor. I could tell that it was Lucian. He knocked on the door and then just stuffed something through the crack of the door. I'm afraid you'll cry, so I'll give it to you like this, he said. I raised my hand and took it. It was a photo. It was the last family photo that I had kept in my wallet. After the school bully snatched my wallet, I had never found this photo again. Lucian stood outside the door and added, "Don't think too much. I just picked it up at home and returned it to you conveniently." But now, someone had wrapped the photo with a layer of plastic film and smoothed out the wrinkles that had been crumpled by others. After entering the high school department, Lucian, who was in the second year of high school, happened to be on the same floor as my class. I forgot since when, after school, he would occasionally wait for me to go home together. When those who liked him saw this, they thought that I was chasing him and regarded me as a rival in love. In the last self-study class before school ended, several senior high school girls called me to the toilet. "Why are you always clinging to Lucian?" "I'm not clinging to him. He's my brother." Even though I answered truthfully several times, they still didn't believe me. One of the senior girls cursed and pushed me hard into a cubicle. Without waiting for my reaction, she closed the door and blocked it with something. I looked up and saw a dirty water bucket being lifted above the door frame. The red bucket was swaying. When it tilted, some dirty black water overflowed. "She's not old, but she's really good at seducing people. Pour this water on her. She'll be dirty and smelly. I want to see how she can still cling to Lucian." After a burst of malicious laughter, a voice suddenly rang out outside the door, accompanied by rapid breathing. "Where's my sister? Lucian, why are you here? Have you thought about it? Do you want to go to the movies with me tonight? I'm fucking asking you a question. Where's my sister?" In the next second, the dirty water poured down from the top of my head uncontrollably. I closed my eyes tightly and subconsciously shouted, "Lucian! All of you get the hell out of here." After a roar, the door of the toilet cubicle was kicked open violently. The water that had been pouring on me suddenly stopped. Instead, there was a warm chest. Perhaps there was no time to react. Lucian just held me like this until the dirty water was almost gone. He no longer cared about Vivian's order to keep away from me. Under the gaze of others, he took my wrist and walked out. The two of us, like drowned rats, stood at the school gate together. Somehow, we burst out laughing together. Lucian pointed at the motorcycle on the roadside. "Dare to ride it? High school students are not allowed to ride motorcycles. Aren't you afraid that your mom will be angry?" "What's there to be afraid of? If she's angry, I'll take the blame. You just need to tell me whether you dare to ride or not." Many years later, when I recalled this day again, on the coastal road in Haicheng, Lucian and I were wearing helmets, sitting on the motorcycle one in front of the other. He leaned forward slightly. When he twisted the throttle, his pure white school uniform was blown by the wind, looking just like the waves at high tide. I raised my hand, wanting to touch it, but then withdrew my hand, perhaps until the last moment of my life. I would always remember. On that day, we saw pedestrians coming and going, each running towards their own lives together, the pale pink crescent moon in the evening, and the sunset glow that followed us all the way forward. When the motorcycle passed a curved road, Lucian's hand reached behind him, accurately grasped my wrist, and pulled it to his side waist. When the palm of my hand touched the fabric of his waist, he said, "Brooke, hold on to me tightly." Spring passed in a hurry in the intense learning atmosphere. In a blink of an eye, it was Lucian's high school graduation ceremony. The Vivian couple were busy competing for shares and had no time to take care of Lucian. In my memory, on the hottest day of that summer, I was holding a bouquet of flowers and looking at Lucian, who was taking graduation photos with his classmates from a distance. When I was lost in thought, Lucian stood in the middle of the crowd and waved to me. He walked up to me with the photographer. "Excuse me. Could you please take a photo for us?" "No problem." The photographer set up the tripod and pointed the lens right at us. "Classmates, get closer. The girl is a bit out of the frame." Hearing that, Lucian turned his head to check the distance. "Why are you standing so far away from me?" "Brooke, come a bit closer." I nodded and took a step closer to Lucian. The expression on his face when I touched the corner of his clothes in the second year of junior high school appeared in front of my eyes, and somehow I didn't dare to get too close to him. "Get ready to take the photo. 3, 2, 1. At the moment when the photographer pressed the shutter, Lucian suddenly took a big step towards me and put his arm around my shoulder. I didn't know what expression I had in that photo. Because in the next second, Lucian groaned and covered his arm. Blood oozed from between his fingers. The school bully who had snatched my wallet back then was standing in front of us, holding a short knife stained with Lucian's blood in his hand. "It was because of you two that I was forced to drop out of school by your mom. My family was also bankrupted by her. Come on, Lucian, let's die together." He roared and raised the knife in his hand, stabbing it towards Lucian's heart. At that moment, I didn't have time to think about anything, just like Lucian who had rushed into the toilet without hesitation to block the dirty water for me back then. I threw away the bouquet and stood in front of Lucian. Fortunately, because the security guards arrived in time, the knife only accidentally injured my thigh in the panic. Lucian picked me up horizontally and rushed out of the restless crowd, running towards the school infirmary. From this angle, I could only see the floating clouds and the tears on Lucian's side face. After making the record, Lucian took me back to the old house. He didn't say a word all the way. Fortunately, that night, no one was in the old house except us. Even the aunt had just asked for leave to go home, so Vivian wouldn't know about what happened today. I carefully moved my injured right leg and walked to the shower room shared with the aunt. Just as I was about to take a shower, there was a rustling sound outside the door. "Brooke, you." Lucian's tone was a bit different from usual. He said intermittently, "Your leg is injured. It should be not very convenient. Do you need me to help?" I was stunned for a moment. "I can manage it by myself." Hearing that, Lucian slid down and sat on the ground with his back against the door. "Then I'll stay here with you." Since I moved to Lucian's apartment in my freshman year, 7 years later, I was standing in the storage room where I had lived before again. What interrupted my memory was the buzzing phone. The caller ID showed, Quinn. Once, before entering the welfare home, Quinn and I were best friends. After being adopted, in order not to attract Vivian's attention, I could only keep in touch with Quinn online. After graduating from university respectively, Quinn finally became a journalist and started working for a news website. Until one day, she told me, "Maybe you're right. The reason for your parents' suicide wasn't as simple as bankruptcy." I checked the news of that year on our website and also asked some professional friends to take a look. "I think there's something strange about the breakdown of your parents' capital chain back then." On the other end of the phone, Quinn, who had always been outspoken, was actually hesitating. "Brooke, have you seen the hot search? Photos of you and Lucian were posted on Weibo." At last, she added another sentence, "The photos are not the ones we asked someone to take." #Brooke Lucian Forbidden Love This topic about me and Lucian came with great force, overpowering the news of the divorce of the top stars in the entertainment industry and directly landing on the first place of the hot search list. It was as if someone had deliberately spent money on it. On the day when the Vivian family and the Minglan group got engaged, before the ceremony was over, the young master of the Lucian family had already disappeared. There's a live stream recording as proof. That day, his fiancée explained that he was suddenly not feeling well. However, he was photographed showing up downstairs at Brooke's house. Pay attention to the last few pictures. The look in Lucian's eyes when he looked at Brooke was definitely not innocent. I opened the pictures attached to the blog post. The first few pictures were indeed the scenes when Lucian was standing downstairs talking to me on the day of his engagement. The person who took the pictures was standing on the side not far from us. Each picture clearly showed our faces, as if the angle had been carefully chosen in advance. When I scrolled further, the scenes in the pictures changed to the Shueji Temple in Haicheng. It was on New Year's Eve last year. Lucian and I went to offer incense in the temple together. The incense smoke curled up. We knelt side by side facing the Buddha. After walking out of the temple, I asked, "What did you wish for?" Lucian put his hands into the pockets of his overcoat. Between his breaths, there was mist lingering around him. Seeing that I lagged a few steps behind, he stopped to wait for me. I wish that the Buddha would bless you and that all your wishes would come true. But when I flipped to the last picture, on the futon, I closed my eyes and put my hands together in front of me. And Lucian beside me wasn't looking at the Buddha statue. Instead, he turned his head and looked at me. I closed the pictures and looked at the last paragraph of the caption again. I have a friend who works in a real estate agency. He told me that the apartment building where Brooke lives now was rented by Lucian when he was in college. They lived together during the college years. Later, I don't know what happened. Lucian moved out by himself, but he bought this house at a price much higher than the market price and left it for Brooke to live in. Seeing this, I felt a buzzing in my ears. In my senior year of college, Vivian found out that Lucian and I were living together. She came over that night and slapped me hard. Her fingernails left scratches on my face. She said to Lucian, "I'll give you one night. Move out and stay as far away from her as possible. Otherwise, you know what I'll do." Back then, after Lucian was beaten, the school bully was forced to drop out of school. Overnight, his family's company went bankrupt and the assets were auctioned off. The next day, Lucian emptied all his luggage, leaving only those cooking books that had been flipped through until they were old. After the car pulling the luggage drove out of the community, I received a call from the landlord. "Brooke, I heard that the male classmate has moved out." "Yes. Then I'll tell you. My family has some urgent matters recently and needs money, so I sold this house." "Do I need to move out?" I asked. No. I've asked the buyer. He's still willing to continue renting it to you. You can live here as long as you want. It's just the rent." My heart sank. "How much does it need to be increased?" The landlord said, "It's a reduction. From the current 4,000 yuan to 500 yuan per month. You can just transfer it to his bank card." Suddenly thinking of something, I opened WeChat, found the chat record with the former landlord, copied the bank card number, and sent it to a friend who worked in a bank. "Account holder? What do you want to check this for?" Immediately after that, my friend sent a message, checked it. The name of the account holder is Lucian. In the next second, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed, Vivian. Just as I swiped to answer the call, Vivian's out-of-control shouts came from the other end of the phone. I knew it. "You two women surnamed Su are no good. You're all the cheapest foxes." Vivian spat out a string of extremely offensive words in one breath. "Brooke, regardless of the grudges between the previous generation, at least I've raised you for 12 years. I sent you to the best school in Haicheng, let you learn to play the piano, and ensured that you had no worries about food and clothing in these 12 years. Even if I were raising a dog, it should have been tamed by now, right?" I smiled and said, "Yes. If deliberately making me wear second-hand old school uniforms, knowing that the piano teacher was making inappropriate advances on me but turning a blind eye, making me live in the storage room, and not allowing me to eat at the table can also be considered as raising, then sure. However, this dog of mine recognizes its owner. Besides, My uncle has already told me that when I was sent to the welfare home back then, he was threatened by you. After saying that, I raised my hand and pressed the switch of the recording pen that he's lying. Vivian, who had always cared about her image, started shouting abuse. It was clearly him who came to me and asked me to help him embezzle the property. He would help me trick your parents into that unfinished building. The red light on the recording pen kept flashing. Realizing what she had said wrong, Vivian suddenly fell silent. Tomorrow is Lucian's wedding. Vivian, are you looking forward to it? I asked. Vivian became hysterical again. Looking forward to what? What are you going to do at my son's wedding? I didn't intend to answer and hung up the phone without hesitation. In the evening, the courier took the envelope from my hand and confirmed with me, "It's an Intercity Express delivery, right?" I nodded and closed the door. Then, I found a phone number in my address book, edited a text message, and clicked send. Officer Chen, all the evidence has been collected. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, at the harbor cruise ship. Lucian and Stella's wedding had been scheduled to be held on a cruise ship a long time ago. This cruise ship was a new joint project between the Vivian family and the Minglan Group. A wedding for a business alliance was already attracting attention, and in this way, it could also promote the new project. Quinn beside me sneered, "Even the children's wedding is all for money." At this time, there were still half an hour left before the wedding began. The guests invited to attend the wedding were all standing at the port. The man in front suddenly said to the person beside him, "Did you hear? In the early hours of this morning, the heir of the Lucian family announced that he would give up his shares and directly withdraw from the Vivian family group." What? The Vivian family is currently at its peak. In the future, it would all belong to him. What's the point of doing this? Originally, Vivian hadn't reserved a seat for me. But now, in the place closest to the ceremony stage, there was a table card with my name written on it. Looking around, this was the only table card that was handwritten. The black carbon pen was used, and the handwriting was powerful, exactly the same as the copybook that Lucian had practiced in college. At 10 o'clock, the cruise ship set sail on the sea on time. After the pre-prepared wedding video was played, the host stood on the stage and said, "Now, let's welcome the bride and groom to enter hand in hand." As the host's voice dropped, the music played in the banquet hall. However, for some reason, the wedding march that should have been played had unexpectedly turned into my piano piece. It was the piece called Thoughts. The whole venue burst into thunderous applause, and the spotlights all shone on the door that was about to be pushed open. However, in the next second, the applause grew weaker and weaker, and instead, whispers of discussion arose everywhere. Stella walked into everyone's sight from behind the door, but she wasn't wearing a wedding dress. She was only dressed in an ordinary short-sleeved shirt and jeans, not looking like a bride at all. The chairman of the Minglan Group stood up and asked in confusion, "Stella, what are you doing?" Stella, however, didn't pay attention and just walked straight onto the stage and took the microphone. "My current name is Stella, but my original name was also Stella." After a pause, her gaze swept over me and finally landed on the chairman and his wife of the Minglan Group. "My father's surname is Lee and he was the founder of the Uenya Company. My mother's surname is Su." Yes, they were the couple who jumped off the 18th floor together because of bankruptcy. I also have a twin sister. Her name is Brooke. Memories went back 13 years. Mom and Dad had promised us a long time ago that when our birthdays came, they would take us to the amusement park to celebrate. However, on the day of my sister's and my 12th birthday, Uncle called and said, "There's news about the investment. It's a female boss surnamed Fu, but we need to have a face-to-face talk with her." At that time, Dad's business had a bit of a problem. To build this hotel, he had invested almost all of his funds. However, a fire suddenly broke out in the materials factory in the early hours of the morning, and most of the materials that had been originally ordered were burned down. The workers who had been finishing up the work in the morning blocked the entrance together in the afternoon, holding banners that read, "Scum Boss, defaulting on the final payment, heartless." Several media outlets reported this matter at the same time. Videos about Dad defaulting on the final payment were widely spread on the internet, and several people who had been on good terms with Dad also withdrew their investments one after another. This tall building that Dad had built with great effort became an unfinished building overnight in people's mouths. They also said that this boss surnamed Lee didn't deserve to be a human being and should just die. So, after hearing Uncle's news, Dad replied without hesitation, "Okay, no problem. Where is the appointment? I'll go there. Let's make the appointment at your building. The investor wants to see the specific situation." Uncle seemed to say casually, "Sister, you come along too. I also have something to discuss with you." Mom frowned and exchanged a glance with Dad. "If you want to borrow money to continue gambling, forget it." "Oh, sister, at a time like this, do you think I'm still thinking about borrowing money? What kind of person do you take me for? It's really a serious matter. Come quickly." After hanging up the phone, Dad, who had never broken his promises, thought for a while and said, "How about this? You put on the new shoes Mom bought and wait for Mom and Dad in the car. When we've finished discussing this serious matter, we'll take you to the amusement park, okay?" The building Dad built was very tall, and I couldn't see the end of it. Until the figures of Mom and Dad appeared in my sight. "Sister, it's Mom and Dad." We held hands and got out of the car, wanting to go up to find them. Just as we walked downstairs, there was a bang sound, and something heavy fell from the sky. I was so scared that I closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, what I saw was Mom and Dad lying motionless on the ground. They would no longer hold us in their arms, nor would they take us to the amusement park to celebrate our birthdays. I lowered my head and saw several red dots splashed on the originally brand new shoes. It was Mom and Dad's blood. That scene slowly overlapped with the current one. In front of everyone, Vivian's expression was as usual, not panicked at all, as if she was certain that we couldn't find conclusive evidence at all. "Oh, so Stella, you're also her daughter. It's really a close relationship. When we were at school, your parents and I were the best of friends." After saying that, Vivian lowered her head and pretended to wipe the corner of her eye with her hand. "I don't blame you for thinking this way. After all, you were so young when you lost your parents. But the police had already investigated the matter back then. Your parents committed suicide due to depression after going bankrupt." I stood up, walked around several round tables, and went onto the stage. "Yes." Looking at Vivian's face, I smiled. "The police did investigate it. However, I still have some evidence that wasn't discovered back then. Aunt Fu, would you like to see it?" The big screen lit up again, but what was played wasn't the wedding video. A man with white hair sat in front of the camera and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm the owner of the materials factory that caught fire back then. The fire that year wasn't a natural disaster but a man-made one. From beginning to end, it was all directed and acted by myself." Quinn stood in front of the camera and asked him, "Who asked you to do this?" The man lowered his head. "It was Vivian, the current chairman of the Vivian Family Group. She said that as long as I was willing to set the fire and burn down those urgently needed materials, she would compensate me for the losses at 5 times the price. Over the years, with that money in my hands, I've always had a guilty conscience. Especially after knowing that the 2 children of President Lee became orphans, I've had nightmares every night." After saying that, he looked at the camera and raised one hand. The camera focused on those several yellowed pieces of paper. "This is the contract that Vivian and I signed back then. She said that after I received the money, I should immediately burn this contract to avoid any future troubles, but I still kept it, just in case. This contract has Vivian's autograph on it, which is enough to prove that what I said is true." The scene changed, and several men in work clothes appeared. "We are all the workers who worked for Boss Lee back then. We didn't have much education. It was Boss Lee who brought us from the village to Haicheng and let us work for him." The man sitting in the middle said, "It's all our fault that we were blinded by money. That year, the harvest in the village was bad, and each of our families had several mouths to feed. Coincidentally, Boss Lee also had financial problems at that time and didn't have money to pay us our wages. Another man continued, yes. Although the boss promised that he would definitely pay us our wages at that time, we were still panicked after not having any income for several months. One afternoon, a man suddenly came and said that he would give each of us a large sum of money. All we needed to do was to take the banners he had prepared and stand at the entrance. He also said that it wouldn't have any impact on Boss Lee, but it could make the boss pay us our wages faster. In the video, Quinn took out a photo and held it in front of them. Is it him? The men squinted their eyes and looked carefully. Yes, it's him. As soon as the photo came out, the whole venue was in an uproar. People who had dealt with Vivian all knew that this man was precisely the secretary who had been by Vivian's side for over a decade. Suddenly, someone slammed the table and stood up. Stella, what on earth do you want to do? I followed the voice and saw that it was the chairman of the Minglan Group. My sister standing beside me chuckled softly. Perhaps it's me who should ask you. What exactly did my adoptive parents do to my biological parents back then? Even though my sister and I had repeatedly emphasized to those adults that Mom and Dad were going to take us to the amusement park and that they would never commit suicide, it was all in vain, and no one would believe two children. Most importantly, Vivian had a very solid alibi. At that time, her son was ill and she was accompanying him in the hospital. The surveillance in the ward clearly captured that. Even my uncle was the same. During the time when my parents fell from the building, his figure appeared in the surveillance of the Vivian Family Group building. At that time, a police officer surnamed Chen took my sister and me to the police station. From the next room came the voice of the police questioning, "Why did you call the deceased?" My sister, she had depression. I asked her to go to the hospital, but she just refused to go no matter what. She insisted that she was okay. But after my brother-in-law's business had problems, her depressive symptoms became more and more serious. I only have her as my relative, so I would call from time to ask about her situation, afraid that she might do something stupid. As he was talking, my uncle was in tears. A series of facts such as the fire in the materials factory, the break of the capital chain, and being under public opinion all made my uncle's words more credible. Finally, my parents' deaths were concluded as suicides. In the evening news of Haicheng TV station, Vivian was wearing a cheongsam, with red eyes, standing in front of that semi-abandoned tall building. The last time I saw them was at the last class reunion. I heard that they were in trouble. I had originally wanted to secretly give them a hand. Unexpectedly, they would make such a drastic choice. As their friend, I will take over this hotel so that their spirits in heaven can see it. Half a month later, the hotel was completed and a ribbon-cutting ceremony was held. Vivian stood in the middle, with a middle-aged couple beside her. They held scissors and smiled at the camera. After the investment of the Minglan Group, the hotel that was not favored was incorporated into the Vivian Family Group. And the next piece of news was that the chairman and his wife of the Minglan Group had no children all along and finally decided to adopt a child from the welfare home. The teacher sitting beside started gossiping, "Why do so many people come to our place to adopt children one after another? Who else? It's that Vivian who just cut the ribbon. So, you deliberately let me see you fighting in the dormitory back then?" Vivian asked. Sort of, I shrugged. We didn't expect that the then famous successor of the Vivian Family Group would really be tricked by two 13-year-old children like us. That day, we decided on the spur of the moment to stage a farce in front of Vivian, making her choose to give up my sister and adopt me instead. In front of so many people, Vivian wouldn't disregard her own false image. And my sister, as the most obedient and well-behaved child in the welfare home, was also adopted by the Minglan Group 3 days later. There was an unwritten rule in the Haicheng welfare home, even though the dean and teachers knew the background of each child very well, they wouldn't disclose any information to the adoptive parents to avoid making them have grudges. So, no one knew the relationship between my sister and me. Then those revelations and photos on the internet. Vivian's voice trembled a bit and she didn't continue asking. I nodded and said, "It was also me." Beside the round table with fresh flower arrangements, Vivian supported the table with her hands and slowly stood up. Why? Why on earth did you deliberately release such revelations? After jointly acquiring my father's hotel, the Vivian family began to cooperate more closely with the Minglan Group. Later, in order to make the cooperation more stable, the two families decided to get engaged and become completely on the same boat. This was also what my sister and I hoped for. Only in this way could it be ensured that when this boat sank, no one could escape. However, before the engagement, due to some business matters, a rift unexpectedly emerged between the Vivian family and the Minglan Group. In order not to let the Minglan Group break off the engagement, I deliberately released revelations on the internet, giving my sister a reason to cry and plead in front of her adoptive parents. For more than 10 years, my sister had always played the role of an obedient, sensible, and worry-free good girl. That was the first time that she cried and begged them. Finally, the Minglan Group still agreed to the engagement. Enough! Vivian shouted. She walked a few steps closer to the ceremony platform. Just based on these unfounded videos, you want to attribute your parents' deaths to me? You're daydreaming. Of course it's not just these. As I said this, after I pointed the voice recorder at the microphone, Vivian's voice rang out in the banquet hall. It was clearly your uncle who came to me and asked me to help him swallow up your family's houses, cars, and other properties. The condition was that he would help me trick your parents to that unfinished building. Vivian staggered. I was drunk. Drunken words can't be used as evidence. Then, she suddenly thought of something and suddenly laughed a few times. Since you want to smear me, why don't you let your uncle come out and confront me? Everyone in Haicheng knows that he's a gambler. For the sake of money, what won't he say? Several people who had a good friendship with Vivian at the scene also stood up to speak for her. Yes, child. Although the Lushan family didn't give birth to you, they raised you after all. You can't slander people like this. I was silent and turned off the voice recorder. I had also thought about letting my uncle confront Vivian. But half a month ago, the house where he had lived for a long time was empty. It was as if he had vanished into thin air and couldn't be found no matter what. I was just about to speak when the big screen behind me made a sound and started playing a video that I had never seen before. A man in ragged clothes appeared in the picture. When he raised his head, my sister and I looked at each other in surprise. It was our uncle whom we had been looking for a long time but couldn't find any trace of. He looked at the person outside the camera. What do you want me to say? The next second, another male voice sounded in the video. Just repeat what you just told me. It was actually Lushan. My uncle let out a deep sigh. Okay, I'll say it. After my mother died, she left all her property to my sister. I was not reconciled, but I endured it. Later, I owed money. They said that if I couldn't pay it back, they would cut off my hand. There was no way, so I could only borrow money from my sister to pay off the debt. But she not only refused to lend it to me but also scolded me in front of so many people. Why? My uncle leaned his back against the wall. I knew Vivian since I was very young and had always known that she had a crush on my brother-in-law for many years. When my sister and brother-in-law got married back then, I also saw Vivian crying bitterly at the banquet. So I found her and told her that I had a way to take revenge on my sister and brother-in-law. After it was done, the hotel would belong to her, and my sister's house, car, and money would belong to me. At this moment, the truth was like an onion being peeled off layer by layer. Where were you when Brooke's parents had an accident? Lushan asked. My uncle, with a sallow complexion, was stunned for a moment. I was at the scene. My sister and brother-in-law were pushed down by me. My uncle wiped his face with his hand. After that, Vivian tampered with the surveillance video of the Vivian family group to create an alibi for me. Vivian also asked me how many children my sister had. After all, my sister and I were siblings. I was afraid that Vivian would do something to the children, so I told her that my sister only had one child, who was in the Haicheng welfare home and named Brooke. After saying that, my uncle looked at Lushan. I promise that every word is true. I have recordings of the calls with Vivian back then. The USB flash drive is stored under the floor of the old house. If you don't believe it, you can go and look for it. I've said everything I should say. You'll fulfill your promise, right? The tens of millions of gambling debts I owe. If I don't pay them back, they'll take revenge on my son. I'm willing to go to prison and atone for my sins. Lucian, please, Lucian interrupted him coldly, you care so much about your child. When you pushed your sister down from the 18th floor with your own hands back then, didn't you think about her 2 children? The video ended here. After a moment of silence in the whole venue, those who had spoken for Vivian got up and left one after another. At this point, the biggest ship floating above Haicheng finally sank into the water. In the corner, a middle-aged man in a jacket quickly walked up to Vivian. It was Officer Chen who had used his meager salary to buy KFC for my sister and me to celebrate our birthdays at the police station back then. He held up his ID to Vivian. Police. Someone has reported you anonymously for using illegal means in business battles and being suspected of colluding with others to commit intentional murder. Come with me. I found Lucian on the deck of the cruise ship. He wasn't wearing the custom-made suit for the wedding but just a pure white t-shirt. From a distance, I suddenly thought that I saw the 18-year-old Lucian. Hearing my footsteps, he turned his head and said, "Congratulations." When our eyes met, I was the first to look away and looked at the sea in front of me. Lucian, I've been using you all along. The first step of all the plans was that I deliberately approached you. He nodded and said, I know. But at least, when you were 16 years old and sat on the back seat of my motorcycle, you nervously grabbed the corner of my clothes. When you were bullied, you subconsciously called my name. And when I made boiled sliced pork in spicy sauce with a lot of salt, you still said it was delicious. At least these moments between you and me were real. Brooke. He walked a few steps closer to me and asked gently, do you like me? After a while, I shook my head and said, no, I don't like you. Suddenly, waves rose on the calm sea. Lucian lowered his head, and the broken hair on his forehead was blown up by the sea wind. He said, but I like you, so much that I'm almost crazy about it. Do you remember the meteor shower we watched together in that house on your 20th birthday? Since then, I told myself that I couldn't get close to you anymore. Lucian smiled helplessly. However, I found that I couldn't do it. I met you when I was 13 years old and now I'm 26 years old. You've integrated into my life as naturally as breathing. I can't help but get close to you. Later, I thought forget it. It's better to sink into it soberly than to suffocate. After saying that, Lucian lowered his head and took out a string of crystal bracelets. He put the bracelet on my wrist. I got this at the Shueji temple. The abbot said that this bracelet can bless the wearer with all good things and make all wishes come true. He fastened the silver clasp of the bracelet, then raised his hand and touched the top of my head. Brooke, we probably won't see each other again in the future. Since I can't be by your side, I'll pray to the Buddha day and night. May all your wishes come true. May you have a fulfilling and happy life. On the day Vivian was imprisoned, Stella decided to convert to Buddhism. Before shaving her head at the Shueji temple, she cut off a strand of her long hair and put it in a wooden box. She said that this meant that the past was gone. Both I and she should live for ourselves. When we met again, it was already the winter of the next year. She was wearing thick monk's robes, and there was a string of Buddhist beads hanging on the part between her thumb and index finger. Amitabha. Just 10 minutes ago, Mr. Fu also came and stood right where you are now. Perhaps this is your karma. I smiled. It's not karma. It's indebtedness. After all, I used him to bring down his mother. My sister put her palms together. Maybe he also hid some things from you. What? I asked. When he was still in the mortal world, he found me and asked me to put on an act in front of his mother. So that day at the dinner table, I deliberately said some harsh words to you. Otherwise, do you think Quinn alone could have managed to get those videos? My sister raised her hand and handed me something wrapped in pear blossom paper. He said he was going abroad and asked me to pass this on to you. I slowly unwrapped it. The moment I saw what it was, I froze on the spot. It was the photo we took together at Lucian's high school graduation ceremony. Even though so many years had passed, the surface of the photo was smooth without any scratches. It could be seen that it had been well preserved. In the photo, I was standing in the sunlight with a gloomy look on my face. At the moment when the shutter was pressed, the young man beside me put his arm around my shoulder and hugged me in his arms, smiling brightly like the morning sun. And I was holding a bouquet of flowers in my arms, among which the Banksy flowers were in full bloom. Suddenly, a snowflake slowly fell on the photo. I looked up. Countless pure white snowflakes were falling gently from the sky. For no reason, Lucian's eyebrows and eyes suddenly appeared in front of me. In the heavy snow, he was wearing a woolen overcoat, standing in front of the Buddhist hall with me, praying to the Buddha devoutly. Lucian. Today we are lucky to be in the snow together. In this life, it can be considered that we have white hair together. Epilogue. After everything was settled, Brooke terminated her contract with the company amicably and became a music teacher at Haiching Primary School. When she wasn't busy, she would also go to the welfare home to teach the children there to play the piano. She taught for 40 years like this. One afternoon in spring, Brooke had just finished a music class. She propped up her elderly body and walked out of the classroom. Suddenly, she froze on the spot and almost couldn't stand. In the corridor, a teenager who looked about 17 or 18 years old was standing by the window. He was wearing a pure white shirt, his hair was neatly cut, and he stood upright. The window beside him was half open. When the spring breeze blew, the shirt on his body was slightly lifted. Brooke subconsciously thought that maybe her time was coming, otherwise why would she see that person's young appearance here? Hearing the noise, the teenager in front of her turned around. In an instant, it was as if a hand had pulled Brooke out of her fantasy. Because the facial features, eyebrows, and eyes of the teenager were completely different from that person's. Are you Grandma Sue? Brooke walked a few steps closer, leaning on her crutch, and said in a kind tone, I am. This is a letter that my grandpa asked me to pass on to you. Your grandpa? The teenager answered seriously, yes. My grandpa's surname is Fu and his name is Lucian. Brooke's hand that was reaching for the envelope stopped in midair. Finally, she asked, how is your grandpa? I guess he must have a happy marriage and many children and grandchildren. After all, she had made a wish for Lucian in front of the Buddha back then. Hearing this, the teenager shook his head. My grandpa was never married. I'm the child he adopted from the welfare home when he was 50 years old. Before passing away, Grandpa told me that I must put this letter into your hands. Hearing the word, passing away, Brooke's hand that was opening the envelope suddenly stopped. After taking a deep breath, she took out the letter paper inside. After unfolding it, a dried Banksy flower was revealed in the middle. Originally, Brooke had been prepared to never see Lucian again in this life. But she never expected that after 40 years, when they met again, it would be at the cemetery. Separated by a tombstone, he was inside, and she was outside. Brooke put down her crutch and walked slowly towards the tombstone. Her right leg, which had been injured before, seemed to ache faintly. She squatted down halfway, raised her wrinkled hand, and traced Lucian's epitaph with her fingertip, stroke by stroke. The bright moon over the Banksy River, and the gentle breeze on the pillow. In the extremely dark first half of her life, Brooke had said, I like you, to Lucian 99 times. True or false, she herself couldn't tell long ago. The 100th time, she said, I don't like you. And Lucian, who had learned to be stubborn under the blows, had actually said, I like you, to her 100 times. The end.